Amora Johnson sat on the cold bathroom floor of the hospital's third-floor restroom, her back pressed against the tile wall as silent tears streamed down her face. The eviction notice crumpled in her shaking hands read 48 hours. Just 48 hours to come up with $2,400 or she and her 7-year-old daughter Tia would be homeless. Her daughter's medical bills from last month's pneumonia treatment sat unpaid at $3,800. Her bank account showed $47.32. She had worked double shifts for 3 weeks straight, cleaning hospital floors from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., then working day shifts at a laundromat. Her body was giving out. Tonight, she had collapsed while mopping the corridor, her vision going black, her legs simply refusing to hold her weight anymore. A nurse had helped her to this bathroom, asked if she was okay, and Amora had lied. She always lied. Because what could anyone do? Who would help a single mother with no family, no safety net, and nothing to offer in return? Her daughter's face flashed in her mind, that beautiful smile, those innocent eyes that trusted Amora to keep them safe. And Amora was failing. She was 28 years old, and she was failing at the only thing that mattered. Have you ever felt like the world was crushing you and no one could see your pain? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to follow Amora's journey. Amora wiped her face with rough paper towels and stared at her reflection. Her brown eyes were bloodshot, her natural hair pulled back into a messy bun, her brown skin looking ashen from exhaustion. She had been beautiful once, or at least she remembered feeling beautiful. Before Tia's father left when she was pregnant. Before her mother passed away 2 years ago. Before every day became a battle just to survive. She splashed cold water on her face and straightened her blue cleaning uniform. Her shift wasn't over. She still had 4 more hours of work, and she couldn't afford to lose this job. It paid $13.50 an hour, which was barely enough to cover rent in their tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the worst part of town, but it was something. As she pushed her cleaning cart down the quiet hospital corridor, her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor who watched Tia while Amora worked nights. Tia's fever is back. 101.2 degrees. Should I give her medicine? Amora's heart clenched. The pneumonia. What if it was coming back? She couldn't afford another hospital visit. She couldn't afford the medicine. She texted back quickly, "Yes please. I'll be home by 6 a.m. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Maybe she could ask her supervisor for an advance on her paycheck. She had asked twice before and been denied, but maybe this time would be different. Maybe if she explained about the eviction, about Tia. "Excuse me, are you all right?" Amora's eyes snapped open. A man stood a few feet away, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white button-down shirt. He looked to be in his mid-30s, with light brown hair and concerned blue eyes. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and something about the way he carried himself suggested someone used to being in charge. "I'm fine," Amora said automatically, straightening up and gripping her cart. "Sorry, I'll get out of your way." "You don't look fine," the man said gently. "You look like you're about to fall over." Amora felt her eyes burning again. She couldn't cry in front of a stranger. She couldn't fall apart here, in this hospital corridor, when she still had hours of work ahead of her. "I'm just tired," she managed. "Long shift." The man studied her for a moment, and there was something kind in his expression that made her throat tighten. "When does your shift end?" 6 a.m. He glanced at his watch. "That's 4 more hours. Have you eaten anything tonight?" Amora shook her head. She hadn't eaten anything since yesterday morning. Food was expensive, and Tia needed to eat more than she did. Without a word, the man walked past her toward the elevator. Amora thought he was leaving, grateful that the awkward encounter was over. But a few minutes later, he returned carrying a white paper bag. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "There's a sandwich, some fruit, and orange juice. Please eat something." Amora stared at the bag, then at him. Strangers didn't do things like this. There had to be a catch. "I can't accept this," she started to say. "You can and you will," he said firmly but not unkindly. "You're clearly exhausted and you need food. There's no catch, no strings attached. Just take it." Something in his tone, a quiet insistence that felt genuine rather than patronizing, made Amora reach out and accept the bag. Her fingers brushed his as she took it, and she felt a strange flutter in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome." He smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm. "I'm Jonathan, by the way. Amora. It's nice to meet you, Amora. I hope the rest of your shift goes better." He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into one of the private patient rooms down the hall. Amora stood there holding the bag, feeling the weight of it in her hands, and something shifted inside her. One small act of kindness in an ocean of hardship. It shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. She sat in the break room and ate the sandwich slowly, savoring every bite. The orange juice was cold and sweet. For just a few minutes, she let herself feel taken care of, even by a stranger. When she returned to work, she felt marginally stronger. Strong enough to finish her shift. Strong enough to go home to her sick daughter and figure out how to survive another day. Strong enough to keep fighting. 3 days later, Amora was still living in her apartment, but only because she had begged her landlord for an extension. He had given her 1 more week. 7 days to come up with $2,400 or he would start the official eviction process. She had been to 3 different churches asking for assistance. One had given her $100. Another had offered prayers. The third had told her their emergency fund was depleted. She was working her regular night shift at the hospital, her body moving on autopilot as she mopped the floors and emptied trash bins. Around 2 a.m., when the hospital was at its quietest, she was assigned to clean the private wing where wealthy patients stayed in rooms more like hotel suites than hospital rooms. She knocked on the door of room 412, waited a few seconds, then used her keycard to enter. The lights were dimmed, and she assumed the room was empty, ready to be cleaned for the next patient. But as she pushed her cart inside, she saw someone sitting in the chair by the window. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Amora said quickly. "I thought this room was empty. I'll come back later." "It's all right." The figure stood, and as he moved into the light, Amora's breath caught. It was Jonathan, the man who had bought her food 3 nights ago. "You," she said softly. "Amora." He smiled, clearly pleased to see her. "How have you been?" She didn't know what to say. The truth was too heavy, too complicated. But something about his eyes, the genuine concern in them, made the words tumble out. "Not great, honestly." She gripped the handle of her cleaning cart. "But I'm managing." "What's wrong?" He moved closer, and she noticed he was wearing casual clothes tonight, jeans and a soft grey sweater. He looked tired too, she realized. There were shadows under his eyes. "I don't want to burden you with my problems," Amora said. "You were kind to me the other night, and I appreciated it, but nothing," Jonathan said. "If something's wrong, you can tell me. Maybe I can help." Amora laughed, a bitter sound. "Unless you have a few $1,000s lying around, I don't think anyone can help me." She regretted the words immediately. It sounded like she was asking for money, like she was some kind of beggar. Heat flooded her face. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have said that. I need to get back to work." "Wait." Jonathan's hand touched her arm gently. "Tell me what's happening. Please." And so she did. She didn't know why, couldn't explain it, but the whole story poured out. The eviction notice. Tia's medical bills. Her exhaustion. The constant fear that she was going to lose everything. She told him about her daughter, about being alone, about working 2 jobs and still drowning. Jonathan listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each word. When she finally stopped talking, he was quiet for a long moment. "How much do you need?" he asked finally. "I can't ask you for money," Amora said immediately. "I wasn't telling you this to. I know you weren't. But I'm offering. How much do you need to get stable? To pay your rent, to pay your daughter's medical bills, to have a little breathing room?" Amora's heart was pounding. "About $6,000. But I could never pay you back. I can barely afford to feed us." "I'm not asking you to pay me back," Jonathan said. "Consider it a gift. Or if that makes you uncomfortable, consider it an investment in someone who deserves a chance to get ahead." Amora felt tears spilling down her cheeks. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. I know enough, Jonathan said softly. I know you're a single mother working yourself to death trying to provide for your child. I know you're not asking for handouts, you're just trying to survive. And I know I'm in a position to help, so why wouldn't I? I don't know what to say. Say yes. Let me help you. Amora thought about Tia, about keeping a roof over her daughter's head, about being able to afford medicine if the pneumonia came back. Pride was expensive, and she couldn't afford it. Yes, she whispered. Thank you. God, thank you so much. Jonathan smiled. Give me your information. I'll have the money transferred to you tomorrow morning. The next morning, Amora was sitting at Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table, her phone in her hand, staring at her bank account. $6,200. The money was really there. Jonathan Pierce had actually done it. He had transferred the money, just like he promised. She had cried for an hour. Mrs. Patterson had held her while she sobbed with relief, with gratitude, with the overwhelming feeling of being saved when she had been drowning. Who is this man? Mrs. Patterson asked, peering at Amora over her coffee mug. She was 72 years old, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Just someone I met at work, Amora said. Kind men don't usually give strangers $6,000, Mrs. Patterson observed. You be careful, sweetheart. Make sure there aren't strings attached. But Amora didn't feel any strings. Jonathan had given her his phone number and told her to call if she needed anything else, but he hadn't asked for anything in return. No weird requests, no inappropriate suggestions. Just kindness. She paid her rent that afternoon, walking into the landlord's office with a money order for the full amount plus next month's rent in advance. The landlord looked surprised but processed the payment without comment. She paid off Tia's medical bills, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders with each transaction. For the first time in years, she had breathing room. She had $1,800 left in her account. Enough to buy groceries without counting every penny. Enough to replace Tia's worn-out shoes. Enough to feel human again. That evening, she texted Jonathan, I don't know how to thank you properly. You've changed our lives. His response came a few minutes later, seeing you not stressed is thanks enough. How's your daughter feeling? They texted back and forth for over an hour. Amora told him about Tia, about her daughter's love of music and dancing, about her dreams of becoming a ballerina. Jonathan told her about his work in real estate development, about his travels, about his love of classical music. 2 days later, Jonathan showed up at the hospital during Amora's shift with coffee and pastries. They sat in the break room for her 15-minute break, talking easily like old friends. He asked about her life, her past, her dreams. I used to want to be a dance teacher, Amora admitted. Before Tia was born, I was taking classes, saving money to open my own studio someday. But life had other plans. It's never too late, Jonathan said. Dreams don't have expiration dates. Amora smiled sadly. Dreams cost money. And time. I have neither. What if you did? Jonathan leaned forward. What if someone invested in your dream? Would you pursue it? That's a nice fantasy, Amora said. But I live in reality. Reality can change, Jonathan said. Think about it. Over the next 2 weeks, Jonathan became a regular presence in Amora's life. He would stop by the hospital with food, always making sure she ate during her shifts. He texted her every day, asking about Tia, about her job, about how she was feeling. Amora found herself looking forward to his messages, to his visits. He made her laugh. He made her feel seen. Not as a struggling single mother or a tired cleaning woman, but as Amora. As a person with thoughts and dreams and value. She tried to repay his kindness in small ways. She baked him cookies using her grandmother's recipe. She texted him funny stories about her day. She listened when he talked about his own loneliness, about being surrounded by people in the business world who only wanted something from him. You're different, he told her one night as they sat in the hospital cafeteria after her shift. You see me as a person, not as a means to an end. You did the same for me, Amora said softly. You helped me when I was nobody to you. That says everything about who you are. Their friendship was growing into something deeper, something neither of them had expected. But Amora was afraid to name it, afraid to hope for more than she already had. It was a Saturday morning, and Amora was doing laundry in the apartment building's basement laundry room when she heard Tia's voice echoing down the stairs. Mommy, come meet my new friend. Amora climbed the stairs to find her daughter standing in the lobby, holding the hand of Jonathan Pierce. Amora's heart did a strange flip in her chest. Jonathan, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by, he said with a smile. But I didn't expect to be recruited as a dance partner. Tia beamed up at him. I asked if he could dance, and he said yes, so I asked if he would dance with you, Mommy. Amora felt her face grow hot. Tia, you can't just ask strangers. He's not a stranger, Tia insisted. He's your friend, right? You talk about him all the time. I do not, Amora protested weakly, but Jonathan was grinning now. She does, he confirmed. And I would be honored to be your mother's dance partner. What's the occasion? Tia launched into an excited explanation about the community center's charity dance event in 3 weeks. Local businesses were sponsoring it to raise money for children's programs, and Tia's after-school program was participating. Each child was supposed to bring their parent or a guardian to dance together. I told everyone my mommy is the best dancer in the world, Tia said proudly. But you need a partner for the grown-up dance at the end. Tia, Mr. Pierce probably has better things to do, Amora started. I really don't, Jonathan said. And I meant what I said. I'd be honored. Amora looked at him, searching for any sign that he was just being polite. But his eyes were sincere, even eager. Are you sure? She asked quietly. Completely sure. Plus, I should warn you, I took ballroom dancing lessons as a kid. I'm pretty good. Oh really? Amora felt a smile tugging at her lips. Well, I should warn you that I taught dance classes in college. So try to keep up. Is that a challenge? Maybe. Tia clapped her hands together. This is going to be so fun. You have to practice though. The dance is in 3 weeks. Jonathan pulled out his phone. When are you free? We should probably practice at least a few times before the event. They settled on meeting twice a week at the community center's dance studio, which had open hours in the evenings. As Jonathan left, Tia hugged Amora tight. I like him, Mommy. He's nice. And he looks at you the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book. Amora's heart squeezed. Baby, Mr. Pierce and I are just friends. That's how all the best love stories start, Tia said sagely. In my books, anyway. Out of the mouths of babes, Amora thought. What do you think happens when they start dancing together? Will sparks fly? Comment below and subscribe to see how their story unfolds. Their first practice session was awkward. Not because they didn't move well together but because they moved too well together. Jonathan's hand on the small of Amora's back felt like fire. When he pulled her close for a waltz, she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth of his body, and her breath caught in her throat. You weren't kidding about the dance lessons, Amora said, trying to keep her voice steady as they moved across the floor. Neither were you, Jonathan replied. You're incredible. They practiced for 2 hours, learning the choreography for the charity event's featured dance. It was a romantic waltz, the kind of dance that required trust and closeness. By the end of the session, they were both breathless and laughing. Same time next week? Jonathan asked as they left the studio. Yes, Amora agreed. Same time. As she drove home with Tia chattering happily in the backseat, Amora realized she was falling for Jonathan Pierce. And that terrified her more than being evicted ever had. Their practice sessions became the highlight of Amora's week. After they finished dancing, they would sit in the community center's cafe, drinking coffee and talking for hours while Tia did her homework or played with other kids in the game room. During their third practice session, as they took a break, Jonathan told her about his childhood. My parents were wealthy, he said, staring into his coffee cup. But they were absent. My father was always working, building his real estate empire. My mother was always at charity events or shopping. I was raised by nannies and tutors. That sounds lonely, Amora said softly. It was. I had everything money could buy, but no one really knew me. No one asked how I felt or what I wanted. He looked up at her. That's why I noticed you that night at the hospital. I recognized that look of complete exhaustion, of being invisible. I felt that way for most of my childhood. Amora reached across the table and took his hand. You're not invisible to me. I know, he said, squeezing her fingers. That's why this friendship means so much to me. Amora told him about her own past. About growing up in a loving but poor household, about her mother's death from cancer, about Tia's father who had left when he found out she was pregnant. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, Amora explained. Said I should have been more careful. Like it was my fault alone. I haven't heard from him since Tia was born. His loss, Jonathan said firmly. Tia is wonderful. And so are you. As the weeks passed, their connection deepened. Jonathan started joining them for dinner sometimes, bringing groceries and helping Amora cook. He played board games with Tia, helped her with her math homework, and read her bedtime stories when Amora was too exhausted. He fit into their lives so naturally that Amora almost forgot to be scared. Almost. One evening, after Tia had gone to bed, Amora and Jonathan sat on her small apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights. I never thought I'd have this, Amora said quietly. Someone who cares. Someone who shows up. You deserve it, Jonathan said. You deserve everything good. Sometimes I worry this isn't real, Amora admitted. That I'm going to wake up and you'll be gone. Jonathan turned to face her, his expression serious. I'm not going anywhere, Amora. Not unless you ask me to leave. I won't, she whispered. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. The air between them felt charged, electric. Amora's heart was racing. The dance is in 4 days, Jonathan said softly. Are you nervous? About the dance? No. Amora looked into his eyes. About everything else. Terrified. Me too, he admitted. But sometimes the best things in life are the ones that scare us. They sat in comfortable silence, Jonathan's hand finding hers, their fingers intertwining. In that moment, Amora let herself hope. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, happiness was possible. The charity dance event was only 2 days away, and Amora's tiny apartment was buzzing with excitement. Tia had been practicing her own dance routine with her classmates, and she performed it for Jonathan and Amora at least twice a day. Again, sweetheart. Amora laughed as Tia took her position for the 5th time that evening. I have to be perfect, Mommy, Tia insisted. Just like you and Mr. Jonathan are going to be perfect. Jonathan had become a constant presence in their lives. He stopped by almost every day after work, still wearing his business suits that Amora now realized were probably very expensive. He would loosen his tie, roll up his sleeves, and help with dinner or homework or whatever needed doing. He had started keeping a change of casual clothes at their apartment. A pair of jeans, some t-shirts, comfortable shoes. It felt domestic and right in a way that made Amora's heart ache with longing. I got you something, Jonathan said one evening, after Tia had finished her latest performance and gone to wash up for dinner. He pulled out a small wrapped box from his bag. Amora took it hesitantly, her fingers trembling slightly as she unwrapped it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a dancing figure. Jonathan, she breathed. This is beautiful. I wanted you to have something special for the dance, he said. And something to remember this time by. Amora felt tears prickling her eyes. You've already given me so much. Not enough, he said softly. Never enough. He helped her fasten the bracelet around her wrist, his fingers gentle against her skin. When he finished, he didn't let go of her hand right away. They stood there, close enough that Amora could feel his breath on her face, and she wanted nothing more than to close the distance between them. But Tia came bounding back into the room, and the moment passed. The next day was Saturday, and Jonathan surprised them by taking them to the park for a picnic. He had packed sandwiches, fruit, juice boxes for Tia, and even a small chocolate cake. They sat on a blanket under a large oak tree, watching Tia play on the swings. Other families surrounded them, couples with their children, elderly people feeding ducks by the pond. It felt so normal, so perfectly ordinary, that Amora wanted to freeze this moment in time. I never had this growing up, Jonathan said, echoing her thoughts. Family picnics, days at the park. My parents were always too busy. You're making up for it now, Amora said, watching him watch Tia with such tenderness on his face. I want to be here, Jonathan said, turning to look at Amora. With you. With Tia. This feels more like home than any place I've ever lived. Amora's breath caught. Jonathan. I know we haven't known each other that long, he continued. But some things you just know. Some people you just recognize as being meant for your life. Before Amora could respond, Tia came running over, demanding they push her on the swings. Jonathan jumped up immediately, chasing after her, and Amora followed, her heart full to bursting. That evening, as Jonathan was getting ready to leave, Tia threw her arms around his waist. I wish you could stay forever, she said. Jonathan knelt down to her level. Me too, kiddo. Then why don't you? Tia asked with the simple logic of a child. Mommy likes you. I like you. You could live with us. Tia, Amora started, mortified. But Jonathan just smiled. That's a very generous offer. Can I think about it? Okay, Tia agreed. But don't think too long. We want you here. After Amora tucked Tia into bed, she found Jonathan waiting by the door. They stood in the small entryway, neither quite ready to say goodnight. She's right, you know, Amora said quietly. We do want you here. Is that your way of saying what I think it's saying? Jonathan asked, moving closer. Maybe, Amora admitted. I'm scared to say it out loud. Scared to want something this much. Then let me say it, Jonathan said, taking her hands in his. I'm falling in love with you, Amora. With you and with Tia. You've given my life meaning in a way nothing else ever has. Amora felt tears streaming down her face. I'm falling in love with you too. But nothing, Jonathan said gently. We'll figure everything out. Together. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Amora didn't want to pull away. She wanted this more than she'd wanted anything in a long time. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. The morning after their first kiss, Amora woke up feeling like she was floating. Jonathan had texted her good morning, along with a photo he'd taken at the park of her and Tia laughing together. The caption read, "My favorite people." Tonight was the charity dance, and Amora's nerves were starting to kick in. Not about the dancing itself, but about what it represented. She and Jonathan would be stepping out together publicly, and even though it was just a community event, it felt significant. But first, she had to get through her shift at the hospital. She had switched to part-time day shifts after paying off her debts, giving herself more time with Tia and more reasonable hours. The extra sleep had done wonders for her health and her mood. During her lunch break, Jonathan called. I've been thinking, he said without preamble. About what you said, about wanting to open a dance studio. Jonathan, that was just a dream, Amora said. Not a realistic plan. Why not? You're an incredible dancer. You love teaching. There's a need for affordable dance classes in underserved communities. His voice was excited, energized. I think you should do it. With what money? Amora asked practically. Studios require space, insurance, equipment. I'd need thousands of dollars just to start. I'll invest in it, Jonathan said immediately. No, Amora said automatically. You've already done too much. Amora, listen to me. This isn't charity. This is a business investment. You draw up a proper business plan, and I'll provide the startup capital. We'll be partners. You'll run the day-to-day operations, and I'll handle the business side. Amora's heart was pounding. Are you serious? Completely serious. I've already been looking at potential locations. There's a space in your neighborhood, ground floor of a renovated building, perfect size for a dance studio. The rent is reasonable, and the landlord is someone I know. Jonathan, I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything, Jonathan interrupted gently. I'm offering because I believe in you and because this is a sound business investment. Dance studios can be very profitable when run well, and I know you'd run it brilliantly. Amora felt tears welling up. Why do you have such faith in me? Because I see who you are, Jonathan said simply. I see your strength, your talent, your heart. And I want to help you build the life you deserve. Amora took a deep breath. She could refuse, could hold on to her pride and her fear. Or she could accept this incredible gift, could step into the life she'd always dreamed of. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll do it. I'll be your partner. She could hear the smile in Jonathan's voice. Perfect. We'll start the paperwork next week. But tonight, we dance. That evening, as Amora got ready for the charity event, her hands were shaking. Gloria, her co-worker who had become a good friend, came over to help her get ready and watch Tia until it was time for the children's portion of the event. Girl, you look amazing, Gloria said as Amora emerged from her bedroom in a simple but elegant navy dress that Jonathan had insisted on buying her. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves in all the right places. With the silver bracelet Jonathan had given her and her hair styled in soft curls, Amora barely recognized herself. I'm nervous, Amora admitted. About the dance or about the man? Gloria asked knowingly. Both. Well, don't be. That man is head over heels for you, anyone can see it. And you deserve every bit of happiness coming your way. When Jonathan arrived to pick them up, the look on his face when he saw Amora made her breath catch. He looked handsome in a dark suit, but it was the expression in his eyes, the wonder and admiration, that made her feel truly beautiful. You're stunning, he said softly. You clean up pretty well yourself, Amora replied, trying to keep her voice light even though her heart was racing. Tia, dressed in her own little dance outfit, grabbed both their hands. Let's go. I can't wait for everyone to see you dance. As they drove to the community center, Jonathan reached over and took Amora's hand. Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something. Meeting you has been the best thing that ever happened to me. Same, Amora whispered. Same. The community center was transformed. Strings of lights hung from the ceiling, creating a warm glow over the polished dance floor. Round tables surrounded the space, each decorated with simple flower centerpieces. A local band was setting up their instruments on a small stage. The event was more attended than Amora had expected. Families from all over the neighborhood had turned out, dressed in their best clothes, excited for an evening of music and dancing. Tia immediately ran off to join her classmates, leaving Amora and Jonathan to find their seats. As they walked through the crowd, Amora noticed people watching them, whispering. She felt self-conscious until Jonathan squeezed her hand. Ignore them, he murmured. Focus on me. The evening began with the children's performances. Tia's group performed their routine to a popular song, and Amora's heart swelled with pride watching her daughter dance with such joy and confidence. When it was over, Tia ran to their table and threw herself into Amora's arms. Did you see me, Mommy? Did I do good? You were perfect, baby, Amora said, kissing her forehead. Absolutely perfect. After dinner, which was a simple but delicious meal catered by a local restaurant, the adult dancing began. Several couples took to the floor for various performances, some funny, some elegant. The crowd clapped and cheered, the atmosphere joyful and warm. Finally, it was time for Amora and Jonathan's performance. As they stood and walked to the dance floor, Amora felt her nervousness fade away. She had practiced this routine dozens of times with Jonathan. She knew every step, every turn, every moment they would be in perfect sync. The music started, a beautiful instrumental waltz. Jonathan took her hand and placed his other hand on her waist, and they began to move. It was magical. Every step flowed into the next, their bodies moving as one. When Jonathan spun her out and pulled her back in, Amora felt like she was flying. The rest of the room faded away until it was just the two of them, lost in the music and in each other. Near the end of the song, there was a moment where they stood close, his hand cradling her face, her hand over his heart. Amora looked into his eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. Love. Pure and simple. As the final notes played, Jonathan dipped her low, and when he brought her back up, The room erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. "That was incredible," someone shouted. "Beautiful," another person called out. But Amora barely heard them. She was still looking at Jonathan, still caught in the spell of the dance. "That was perfect," she whispered. "You're perfect," he replied. They walked off the dance floor hand in hand, and Tia came running up to them, her eyes shining. "Mommy, Mr. Jonathan, everyone is talking about how amazing you were. You looked like a princess and prince." As the evening continued, several people approached their table to compliment their performance. The director of the community center, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, sat down with them. "That was truly special," she said warmly. "You two have real chemistry. Have you considered teaching dance classes together? We're always looking for instructors for our adult programs." Amora glanced at Jonathan, who smiled encouragingly. "Actually," Amora said, feeling a surge of confidence, "I'm opening my own dance studio soon. I'd love to talk to you about potential partnerships." Mrs. Chen's face lit up. "That's wonderful. Here's my card. Call me next week and we'll discuss it." After Mrs. Chen left, Jonathan leaned close to Amora. "See? It's already starting. Your dream is becoming real." Later, as the event was winding down, Jonathan pulled Amora onto the dance floor for one more dance. This time it was just for them, no performance, no audience. Just two people swaying to soft music, holding each other close. "Amora," Jonathan said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" she asked, looking up at him. "I love you," he said. "Not just falling. I'm there. Completely. I love you and I love Tia, and I want to be part of your lives. Officially." Amora felt her eyes filling with tears. "I love you too. So much it scares me." "Don't be scared," Jonathan said. "We'll figure everything out together." He kissed her then, in the middle of the dance floor, with the lights twinkling above them and the music playing softly. It was the kind of kiss that sealed promises, that marked new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, Amora saw Tia watching them from their table, a huge smile on her face. Her daughter gave her a double thumbs up, and Amora laughed through her tears. This was happiness. This was what she'd been fighting for all along, even when she didn't know it was possible. Can you feel the magic between them? What do you think happens next? Comment below and subscribe for the next chapter. The week after the charity event passed in a blur of happiness. Jonathan helped Amora start working on her business plan for the dance studio. They spent hours together going over finances, marketing ideas, class structures. He introduced her to his business partner, Richard Coleman, who would help with the legal paperwork. Amora had quit her job at the hospital, using the last of her savings to get by until the studio opened. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. For the first time in years, she was building something, not just surviving. Jonathan had practically moved into her apartment. He slept on the couch most nights, not wanting to overstep boundaries with Tia in the next room, but he was there every morning for breakfast and every evening for dinner. They were becoming a family. On Saturday afternoon, Amora was at the potential studio space with Jonathan, measuring rooms and discussing layout ideas, when his phone rang. He stepped outside to take the call, and Amora continued making notes. A few minutes later, the door opened, and a well-dressed man in his 50s walked in. He looked around with interest before his eyes landed on Amora. "You must be Amora," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Richard Coleman, Jonathan's business partner. We spoke on the phone earlier this week." "Of course, nice to meet you in person," Amora said, shaking his hand. "Jonathan should be back in a minute. He's on a call with some investors about the new downtown development project." Richard pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. "The Pierce Corporation's latest venture. Should break ground next month." Amora smiled politely, not really understanding. "That's great." Richard looked up, his expression curious. "He hasn't told you? About the company?" "What company?" Amora asked, feeling a prickle of unease. "The Pierce Corporation. One of the largest real estate development firms on the East Coast. Jonathan's the CEO. He took over from his father 3 years ago. Richard was watching her face carefully now. You really didn't know? Amora felt the ground shift beneath her feet. CEO? I knew he was in real estate, but his company is worth billions, Richard continued. The man could buy this entire neighborhood if he wanted to. I just assumed. I mean, how could you not know? The door opened and Jonathan walked back in, smiling. But his smile faded when he saw Amora's face. What's wrong? He asked immediately. You're a billionaire, Amora said flatly. And you never told me. Jonathan's eyes cut to Richard, who looked suddenly uncomfortable. I'll step outside, Richard said quickly, leaving them alone. Amora, I can explain, Jonathan started. Explain what? That you've been lying to me this whole time? Amora's voice was rising. I told you everything about my life. I let you see me at my lowest. And you never thought to mention that you're worth billions of dollars? I didn't lie, Jonathan said. I told you I was in real estate. That's not the same as telling me you're the CEO of a major corporation, Amora shot back. Why didn't you tell me? Were you embarrassed of me? Did you think I'd treat you differently? No, Jonathan said firmly. It's the opposite. Everyone in my life wants something from me because of my money. Business deals, investments, favors. But you just saw me as a person. I didn't want that to change. So you let me think you were just some regular guy. Amora felt tears burning her eyes. Do you have any idea how foolish I feel right now? You have no reason to feel foolish, Jonathan said, moving closer. My feelings for you have nothing to do with money. They never have. But Amora stepped back. Your world and mine are so different. I'm a single mother who was cleaning hospital floors a month ago. You're a billionaire CEO. This doesn't make sense. Love doesn't have to make sense, Jonathan said softly. But reality does, Amora countered. What happens when you get tired of playing house with me and Tia? When you realize that your real life is fancy parties and business deals, not dance studios and park picnics? That's not going to happen, Jonathan insisted. You don't know that, Amora said. And I can't risk Tia's heart. She's already so attached to you. If this falls apart. It won't fall apart, Jonathan said desperately. Amora, please. My money doesn't change who I am or how I feel about you. But Amora was already shaking her head, backing toward the door. I need time to think. Alone. She left before he could stop her, practically running to her car. Once inside, she let the tears come, sobbing into her hands. How could she have been so naive? Of course there was something too good to be true about Jonathan. Men like him didn't fall in love with women like her in real life. This was some kind of fantasy she'd let herself believe in. By the time she got home, she had made a decision. She needed to protect herself and Tia. That meant putting distance between them and Jonathan, at least until she could figure out if this relationship was real or just a kind man's temporary charity project. For 3 days, Amora avoided Jonathan's calls and texts. She told herself she was doing the right thing, protecting her heart and Tia's. But the apartment felt empty without him. Tia kept asking where Mr. Jonathan was, why he didn't come for dinner anymore, and each question broke Amora's heart a little more. On the 4th day, Amora was sitting on her apartment balcony, staring at her phone, when she heard a knock at the door. Tia ran to answer it before Amora could stop her. Mr. Jonathan, Tia squealed, and Amora's heart lurched. She stood up and walked to the living room where Jonathan stood in the doorway, looking tired and worried. Tia was hugging his waist, and he was gently stroking her hair. Hey, kiddo, he said softly. Can I talk to your mom for a few minutes? Tia looked between them, her young face serious. Are you fighting? Because fighting is silly. You love each other. We're not fighting, Amora said, her voice cracking. Go to your room for a little bit, baby. Mr. Jonathan and I need to talk. Once Tia had reluctantly left, closing her bedroom door behind her, Jonathan and Amora stood facing each other across the small living room. I should have told you about my company, Jonathan said before Amora could speak. You're right. I should have been completely honest from the beginning. I was wrong to keep that from you. Why didn't you? Amora asked quietly. Because for the first time in my adult life, Someone saw me, Jonathan explained. Not my bank account, not my connections, not what I could do for them. Just me. And I was selfish enough to want to hold on to that feeling. He moved closer, and Amora didn't step back this time. But I understand why you're scared, he continued. Our worlds are different on paper. But Amora, my world is empty without you in it. I don't care about fancy parties or business deals if I can't come home to you and Tia at the end of the day. How do I know this is real? Amora whispered. How do I know you won't wake up one day and realize you made a mistake? Because I know my own heart, Jonathan said simply. I've been lonely my entire life, surrounded by people but completely alone. Until I met you. You and Tia have given my life meaning, purpose, joy. That's not something I'm going to throw away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Amora's breath caught. I was going to wait longer to do this, Jonathan said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful but not ostentatious diamond ring. I was going to plan something romantic and special. But I can't wait. I don't want to waste another day without you knowing how serious I am about us. He got down on one knee right there in her tiny living room. Amora Johnson, I love you. I love your strength, your courage, your beautiful heart. I love the way you love your daughter, the way you chase your dreams despite every obstacle. I love who I am when I'm with you. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me? Amora felt tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Jonathan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they finally broke apart, Tia's bedroom door flew open. Did he ask you to marry him? Tia demanded. Because I heard everything and I want to know. He did, Amora laughed through her tears. And I said yes. Tia shrieked with joy and came running, and suddenly all three of them were hugging, laughing and crying at the same time. The next 6 months passed in a whirlwind. Amora and Jonathan got married in a small ceremony at the community center where they had danced together, surrounded by friends and neighbors. Tia was the flower girl, wearing a princess dress she'd picked out herself. The dance studio, which Amora named Second Chance's Dance Academy, opened 2 months after the wedding. The community response was overwhelming. Amora taught classes for children and adults, offering sliding scale payment options so that families who couldn't afford regular rates could still participate. Jonathan had been right, it was a sound business investment. Within 4 months, the studio was profitable and growing. Amora hired 2 additional instructors to handle the demand. But more than the business success, Amora found fulfillment in seeing her students flourish. She watched shy children gain confidence, saw adults rediscover joy, helped teenagers find a positive outlet for their energy. This was what she was meant to do. On a cool autumn evening, almost a year after Jonathan had first bought her that sandwich in the hospital corridor, Amora stood in the doorway of the dance studio, watching the last class of the day. Jonathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. Tired? He asked. Good tired, Amora said, leaning back into him. The best kind of tired. I have news, Jonathan said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Doctor called today. You're going to need to take it easier in a few months. Amora spun around to face him. You mean? We're having a baby, Jonathan confirmed, his eyes shining with joy. Amora threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at the same time. We're having a baby. That night, they told Tia at dinner. Her reaction was exactly what they expected. Pure, uninhibited joy. She immediately started planning how she would be the best big sister ever. As Amora tucked Tia into bed later that evening, her daughter looked up at her with wise eyes. Mommy, remember when we didn't have enough money and you were so sad all the time? I remember, baby. I'm glad that's over, Tia said seriously. I like our life now. I like that Mr. Jonathan is my daddy now. I like that you smile all the time. Me too, Amora whispered, kissing her forehead. Me too. After Tia fell asleep, Amora and Jonathan sat on their balcony, the same balcony where they had first held hands all those months ago. But now they lived in a different apartment, in a safer neighborhood, with more space for their growing family. Do you ever think about that night? Jonathan asked. When I first met you in the hospital? All the time, Amora admitted. I was so broken that night. So hopeless. And look at you now, Jonathan said, taking her hand. Running your own successful business. Married. About to have another baby. You did this, Amora. You took a chance on yourself, on us, and you built this life. We built this life, Amora corrected. Together. She looked down at the dance studio across the street, seeing the lights still glowing in the windows, the sign with her name on it. Second Chance's Dance Academy. That's exactly what this was. A second chance at happiness, at love, at the life she'd always dreamed of. Sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest futures. Sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes, a little girl asking a stranger to be her mother's dance partner can change everything. Amora touched her stomach, where their baby was just beginning to grow, and smiled. This was her happy ending. And it was just the beginning.